Prisoner hot watered in HMP Barlinnie. That's what I'm talking about in this episode, people. Hope everyone is well. But before I get into the video, hit that like button to get the algorithm up to get more people watching this episode. So the one I'm going to be talking about happened last year up in HMP Barlinnie, and it was Mark Kane who had hot watered Jared Doof. So Jared Doof is a bacon. So another episode of bacon bashes. So Jared Doof was serving a 7-year sentence for hairy aping on a 14-year-old girl. Now it did say that he would have gotten a 10-year sentence had he not pleaded guilty, but I did have a quick look into this case and it was quite horrific. As you can imagine, he was 25 at the time. She was 14-year-old. They were at a house party. He'd locked her in and obviously he hairy aped her. And if you're new to the channel, this is a slang term in prison for hairy ape equals, as you can imagine what I'm trying to say. I don't say that word on YouTube because it is not allowed. So Mark Kane, who done this attack upon Jared Doof, is serving a substantial sentence to start with, and he has been in and out of prison quite some time. So I had a look into Mark Kane and a few different things popped up, and he was actually jailed for an attempted murder. But back in 2011, Mark Kane, who was 21 at the time, attacked 17-year-old Brian Corn with a knife in High Blantyre. So for that offence, he was sentenced to 7 years, I believe it was. So obviously after that sentence, he'd been out for a while, and he was then put on an order for lifelong restriction. So the OLR up in Scotland is the equivalent of what the IPP is down here in England and Wales. So if you're sentenced to an OLR, it is a parole hearing. And one of my subscribers actually put his wise onto this, because when I've been doing videos on the IPPs, I mentioned that they don't have it up in Scotland. But then they told us about the OLR, order for lifelong restriction. And that is the same or even worse than the IPP, because the prisoners up there serving that, the release rate is not anywhere near the IPP. So it is actually worse when you have a look into it. There's not as many serving the sentence. Obviously, there's not as many prisoners up in Scotland. But he was given that order in November 2020 after he had threatened to zap a 55-year-old carer after she did a home visit if she did not hand over her handbag, and it was done for attempted robbery. So he was caged for 2 years for the High Court offence. But that was obviously the minimum he must serve on the OLR. And obviously for this next offence, he was given an additional 20 months. But obviously this is probably his way of dishing out some prison justice. Obviously he's in prison for violence, robberies. Then he's come across Jared Doof, who is in for being a bacon. So he's obviously took it into his own hands, as a lot of them do inside of prison, especially the likes of Mark Kane, who, by what I've read, is an absolute lunatic and he doesn't seem to give a shit. So he's probably thought this is his chance to get a bit of prison justice. So it did say it happened in the shower room. He's followed him in with some boiling hot water, probably in a flask, because it would have cooled down if he took it from the pad to the showers. But in prison, the prisoners do get flasks, what they're allowed to fill up as you go down for your lunch. There's someone on the tea urn with the hot water, and you get a flask of hot water every mealtime. Some prisons have kettles in, some of them don't trust you with a kettle, so you go down and obviously, like I've just described there, so he's obviously filled it full of sugar, because as you can imagine, hot water mixed with sugar sticks to you and causes severe injuries and scarring. So this is what he's actually done. Went in, chucked it over Jared Doof in the showers. A bit of prison justice. Like a lot of people might think it is just deserved. These type of inmates get their justice in prison. Like I've done loads of videos on this, and I will continue to do loads because the viewers seem to like hearing this. Obviously, those type of offenders are different to any other type of offender because they're offending with their man bits and, as you can imagine, leaving lifelong trauma upon their victims. So the victims will be glad when they're hearing about these type of offenders, giving them a bit of justice inside a prison. Not only did they get their justice off the judge, because a lot of them do get minimal sentences, so the lads inside dish out a bit of prison justice, and every time he looks in the mirror, he'll remember what he done and what that scoring was for, obviously for what he was in for. A bit of prison justice, as I've said. But up in HMP Barlinnie, which the locals call it the Big House, or Bar L, is the largest prison up in Scotland. And it is one of the most violent. It is like a remand prison, so prisoners who are waiting to go up on trial, being sent straight or come straight off the streets into there, get convicted, then they move on to another prison. But there is, I believe they call them halls up there. There is some halls where the convicted prisoners are, which obviously this is where these must have been housed at. So it's not just remand, it is also for convicted prisoners, and it does house some of Scotland's most dangerous and notorious inmates. But it is supposedly been where it was meant to be for 1,000 inmates capacity, but I think there's around about 1,600 inmates at the moment, which it's the same down here in England with the old Victorian prisons. They are severely overcrowded and understaffed, and they're absolute rat-infested shitholes. And I've been told from people who's been in Bar L, and people who I've had on the podcast, Chris, who I had on previously, he's told us a lot about that prison. And obviously, it has got a bad name, and it is renowned for the Glasgow smile, I believe they call it, or the Glasgow kiss, where the big Mars bar down the face, what they call it in here, Glasgow kiss up in Scotland. So that's what the prison is renowned for. And as you can imagine, it's rife with drugs, as most of the prisons are now. And when it's like that, people are getting attacked on a daily basis anyway, fighting over drugs. And a lot of people actually pay other inmates to do hits on the other inmates, and it costs very minimal in drugs to pay it, especially the likes of Spice or Subbies. £50 worth, and someone can get a Glasgow kiss or a Mars bar, as we say down here. And that's just what happens inside of prison. But I'm bringing you the stories, letting everybody know what's happening. And I've done a lot of topics, or done a lot of stories on the Scottish prisons, few on the Irish prisons. But I will be doing a whole lot more. And if you have got any stories you want us to cover, let us know in the comment section, because as you can imagine, I like to cover a wide variety of different regions, not just down here in England. Obviously, I've got a lot of Scottish subscribers because of the videos I've done previously. So I will be doing more and uploading more about what happens inside of the Scottish prisons. But I think I'll leave that one there for now, people. And if you are enjoying it, remember to comment, like and subscribe. And there will be plenty of more bacon bashes coming up. Take care, everyone.